So just an update, I saw my mistake on the video. The slot where the wire is should align with where the clip is, then it should go up. And I just corrected this. Previously it was up here, the clip was up here, so I had to move it back here so that they are aligned with each other before the brake sensor wire goes up. So I'm just fixing my mistake, so I'm putting it back together right now. Hello and welcome to How to Helen, where you learn something different every day. In this episode, we will be replacing the rear brakes and rotors on this 2009 Porsche Cayman. This procedure should also apply to Porsche 911 and Boxsters. For safety, make sure you choke your tire. Please note that this is one of the projects that we have that we need the handbrake down. Because if we have the handbrake up, then the handbrake mechanism will be engaged and it will grab onto the rotors. Therefore, you won't be able to remove the rotors. Before replacing the brake pads and rotors, let's reduce the amount of brake fluid in the brake fluid reservoir. The reason we're doing this is because when we decompress the brake pads, the brake line would rush back the fluids into the brake fluid reservoir, and it might cause some spillage if it's completely full. Now, I lay down some paper and paper towels just in case some spillage occurs when we're reducing the amount of fluid in it. So first thing we need to do is open the access panel, then twist off the cap. Now there's a filter here, so take out the filter. Next, you would need a turkey baster and some container for the fluid that we're taking out. So with a turkey baster, suck some fluid, then move it to the glass container. Now put back the filter, close the cap, and wipe off the spillage that has occurred. Now we are ready to replace the brake pads and rotors. Use a 10mm socket to remove the 10mm bolt that's holding the bracket for the brake hose. Remove the metal ear clip from the retaining bolt. Using a punch tool, punch out the retaining bolt. Unclip the brake pad sensor from the metal bracket and you can wiggle it to get it off. Now with the needle nose pliers, you can take off the brake pad sensors. Position the brake pad spreader on the ears of the brake pads so you have leverage on spreading them. Spread them as much as you can because the new brake pads and rotors are going to be thicker and will require more space in inserting them. Now you can remove the brake pads. The caliper is held up by two T55 torque bolts, so use a T55 torque socket to remove them. Before completely removing the caliper, make sure you have a caliper hanger or a box or a block of wood so you can have a place to rest the caliper. so it is not hanging by the brake hose. In my case, I will be using a jack stand to hold the caliper in place so it's not resting on the brake hose. Otherwise, the brake hose might break off or sprung a leak. Use a JIS number 3 screwdriver for the rotor screw. That way, we don't strip the heads of the rotor screw. This is the industry standard for the rotor screws. Lightly tap the back of the rotor to separate it from the hub. Before I put in the new rotors, I'm gonna clean the hub so that the rotor and the hub will have good contact. Here's the side-by-side comparison of the old rotor and the new rotor. Now let's install the new rotor. Make sure you align the hole for the rotor screw on the hub. If you're gonna reuse the rotor screws, make sure you soak them with WD-40 before installing so that it will minimize rusting. If you still have some brake clean, spray on the rotor to remove any dirt and debris we introduced. Then wipe it off with a clean paper towel. Before installing the caliper and caliper bolts, dab some tread lacquer on the bolts so that it may help in keeping it in place. Not too much, just enough for it to stay in place. Now position the caliper and put the bolts in place. Tighten the caliper bolts to 63 foot-pounds. Insert the new brake pads. If your new brake pads and rotors came with lubricant, lubricate the retaining bracket. Lubricate also the retaining bolt. Now let's reinstall the retaining bolt. Now make sure that the hole on the retaining bolt is facing upwards because we need to put in the metal ear clip later. Now install the metal ear clip. Reinstall the brake pad sensors. Make sure that the brake pad sensor sits correctly on its position. Don't forget a 10mm bolt that holds the brake bracket in its place. Do the other side as well, as it is recommended to do both sides at the same time. And that is how you replace the rear brake pads and rotors on a 2009 Porsche Cayman. This has been another episode of How to Helen. My name is RJeff, and thank you for watching.